Hey, how's it going? One of the questions that I get asked all the time is about the different job titles that exist in IT and cybersecurity and which ones you should go for, what the pay is, how many years of experience they typically require, all these kind of related questions that are important for which job title that you start applying to or that you start pursuing. So, what I've done is I've gone out and I've diagrammed all this. We're going to go through it. We're going to talk about the different job titles, what the typical progression looks like, and how many years of experience that you're typically going to need for these different types of jobs to give you a better understanding of just how all this stuff works together and how you can go through this process in your career and look for the different jobs and continue that progression that you need for your career. So let's go ahead and flip on over to my screen and we'll get started. Okay, so as I said, I've gone ahead and diagrammed out all these common job titles for both IT and cybersecurity. I've included the amount of years of experience you can expect to be required for these jobs. Doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes it's less, sometimes it's more, but this will give you a general idea, as well as the amount of pay or salary that you can expect with these jobs. Now let's go ahead and break it down by these different categories or different paths that we can better understand this. All right, so I've zoomed in on the entry level category here. This is going to be 0 years of experience or more. It's just going to depend on the organization, the team, the department, the hiring manager. There's lots of factors that go into all this stuff, but this will give you a general idea here of the entry level. A lot of people start out at this help desk level. That's just how it is. That's what people will often start out in their careers doing for tech careers. So you can see here that 47,000 to 69,000 is what people are typically going to make in a help desk job. Again, could be slightly less, could be slightly more. A lot of these figures have come from Glassdoor, which is a popular job searching website, and they will list a bunch of salaries and take in a bunch of information and kind of give you general ranges of what people are making in a specific job title. So keep that in mind as we go through this. That's what you're looking at as a help desk technician. Again, that's kind of the very entry level spot or job that you'll find in the tech industry or tech career field. Now, a lot of times people will go to IT support specialist from here. Now, that's going to be 55,000 to 81,000. So definitely a bump up here as far as pay. And again, that's just kind of the progression. A lot of times with IT support specialists, they'll focus in on a specific type of application or a specific area that they're providing support. Some organizations have these roles for the entire organization, for all the tech stacks, all the applications. Again, a lot of this stuff varies, so you can't necessarily expect that it's going to be one way across the board on all the companies, but that's a general idea. Then, like a lot of jobs, you're going to go to a senior level role here. So, senior IT support specialist, it's going to be 69,000 to 106,000. It's a pretty big jump, right? That's a pretty good jump from that help desk technician level. You can see that the bottom of this level, the bottom of the senior level, is the high end of the help desk position. Keep that in mind. Now, as we look in this, you can see that this is the entry level category or that entry level box. That doesn't mean typically that you're going to have 0 years of experience and you're going to be a senior IT support specialist or a senior IT support professional. Typically, as we're going through this and as we're going across these boxes, you're going to see that it's going to start to be more years of experience. Maybe 1 year of experience, 2 years of experience. Again, a lot of people start out in this kind of category and then they will branch off either continuing down this path or they will start to go into things like IT or cybersecurity. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to scroll over here to this next category. So if we keep going, you can see this mid-level role here, this IT support lead. So 82,000 to 125,000. Typically with a lead type of job, this is more responsibility, this is more oversight. You're leading projects, you're leading team members maybe. So you might be like a technical lead or a tech lead. This is a pretty common term that you might have heard about. And so you might be overseeing people that are overseeing certain applications. So a team of 5 or a team of 3 or a team of 2, 1, whatever. But this is just a higher level responsibility. And you can see it's in this mid-level. So it's going to be 2 to 5 years typically, somewhere in that ballpark where you can start to qualify for this. And because it is help desk for the lead positions, it's going to be a little bit different for the other areas like IT and cyber when you start getting into management and things like that. But that's a really good route, especially if you want to get into management. If we keep scrolling over here and we go to the experience category, so IT support manager, 102,000 to 163,000. Now we're really starting to get up there in the dollars or in the pay and the compensation. Even with the mid-level, with the IT support lead, you're making pretty good money compared to a lot of other jobs and compared to where you would start if you started at the bottom with help desk. All right, so now let's go on to the further spots here, the management spots. So you can see IT manager, 110,000 to 177,000. Again, we're continuing to jump, continuing to get better pay. IT manager, again, just like IT support manager, an IT manager would be considered a higher level manager. So you might oversee the support function, you might oversee something else, an apps team or business analysts or whatever, right? There's all kinds of different things that you can oversee as a manager, but you're really starting to get more and more responsibility, a lot of projects, a lot of oversight. Then you can see there's a senior IT manager, so 178,000 to 273,000. So again, as you're climbing the ranks, you're going to start making more money, you're going to start getting higher level positions, and you're just going to climb the ladder. That's just how it is. Then we can see that that goes into the director of IT. So that's the next level, 143,000 to 225,000. Pretty good jump. Remember where you started. That is definitely a good increase from the entry level help desk. But when you're starting to get in this late stage career, this 10 to 15 years, because remember, once you start to get IT manager, senior IT manager, that's 5 to 10 years. Late stage, 10 to 15 years. Start looking at things like director of IT. Then the VP of IT, which is obviously a higher role, 183,000 to 294,000. Good jump, right? Good increase. Once you start getting into these categories too, you're going to start getting things like stock equity or additional bonuses. There's all kinds of different incentives for these higher level positions. So this is just salary in a lot of cases. You might make more than this based on those other factors. If we keep scrolling over here, late stage career, this is the pinnacle of IT. The CIO, the Chief Information Officer, 293,000 to 523,000. So that is quite the jump as far as pay from where you started if you started in help desk and you were able to make it all the way to the CIO. The CIO oversees all the operations, all the infrastructure, all the IT teams that are in the company. And so there's a ton of responsibility with that. This is one of the most common roles that oversees technology. Sometimes you'll also hear these roles called CTOs or Chief Technology Officers. Sometimes it's used synonymously, so it's interchangeably used. Not always. Sometimes that's a different function, a different role, but just understand sometimes they are used in the same context. So now let's start looking at the IT function. So if you're coming through the IT function, maybe you're starting at help desk, maybe you're just jumping right in, but you have the network administrator. If you're looking at Cisco gear, Juniper gear, stuff like that, you're dealing with the networks. It's more of a traditional IT role as well. Looking at 72,000 to 114,000. It's pretty good. As far as roles in the company, in the IT department, network administrator is definitely a higher role than help desk. It's definitely a higher role in the hierarchy than something like IT support. So again, remember I talked about this when we first started, that you're going to start to see in these different categories the kind of hierarchy of these roles and where they fall. It's not necessarily all about money, But there are certain roles that if you're just looking at it from an organizational standpoint, an important standpoint, there are some roles that will require more experience, more skill sets, and they're just kind of more important to the overall infrastructure in the company. So keep that in mind. It's really important to understand that as far as the importance of different roles and kind of where you fit in the organization. That's why you want to try to get these higher level roles to become more and more important. So with that being said, then you typically are going to go to a senior network administrator role. So 108,000 to 160,000. It's a pretty common salary for that type of role. You've shown that you're seasoned in the networking arena. You understand Juniper, you understand Cisco, whatever gear that you're using. You can be relied on if something happens to resolve that, to troubleshoot it, and just take care of it and make sure that the network is up and running. From there, you most likely would go to something like a network architect role once you get in that 5 to 10 years of experience realm. So 160,000 to 254,000. Again, as we start climbing, you start to see these salaries really start to pop. From network architect, which is concerned about how things are laid out, how they're structured, the system in which you have set up, how you structure your hierarchy of routers and switches and firewalls and everything like that. Then we start to go to IT manager. So we've talked about IT manager before. There's a lot of different ways that you can get to IT manager, 110,000, 177,000. And then the rest of the path is the same of what we covered in IT support. So typically, those higher level roles like CISO and things like that, they don't frequently come out of things like IT support or help desk. Again, that doesn't mean they can't, but more commonly, they're going to come out of one of these other IT areas. It's just how it is because, again, it's just how the hierarchy works with these roles, and doing these other roles is going to give you more of an understanding of the overall architecture, the network, and again, it's a higher level role. It's just how it is. So if we go back here, we'll go back to the next level. All right, so system administrator. This is another role you're probably familiar with. 89,000 to 141,000. Now, sometimes network administrator, network engineer, and system administrator are mixed. They're used interchangeably. Some organizations will just combine all those responsibilities, and that's okay if that fits your organization and how you're set up. But system administrators are typically focused on things like Windows Server operating system, group policies, Linux operating systems, all those kind of things, Mac OS, and just running those and making sure they're configured and that they stay up. From there, just like network administrator, you have a senior system administrator, 144,000 to 206,000. I'll move over here so you can see it, so my head's not in the way. But again, you're just climbing the ladder, you're climbing the order of importance and how much seniority you have and where you fit in the actual hierarchy. Keep scrolling here. Now, for senior system administrator, typically you're going to go to an IT manager role, just like we saw with the other roles, the network architect and the IT support manager type of roles. But you don't always have like a system architect kind of role in here. If you did, it'd be very similar to the network architect, except it would be focused on systems. But again, you don't typically see that. It's infrequent, but you could. But again, it'll be similar salaries to like the network architect, similar kind of responsibilities, just more focused on the system aspects instead of the network aspects. If you're enjoying the content so far, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. That way YouTube knows this content is helpful for other people. Also, make sure to check out the description for more resources related to this video. All right, let's get back to the content. Now, if we go back here, we're going to start getting into the security stuff. So, security analyst. This is a very common role that most of you are familiar with. You've heard about these in a security operations center, like a SOC analyst. All the security analyst kind of roles, we're just going to lump them into this because that's basically where they're going to fit. 118,000 to 198,000. Now, I know somebody out there is going to say, well, that's not true. That's not where I'm starting. A lot of people start at like 60,000 and all this stuff. Remember, these are numbers taken from things like Glassdoor that are averaging a lot of this stuff. So yes, you could technically start as a security analyst making something like $60,000 a year. Totally, right? So really we could bump this down to 60,000 to almost 200,000 because you can see there's such a wide range. But as far as security jobs, again, 0 years of experience, where you might start, because that's this first category, you might start in a security analyst role just right away. You're going to be looking at logs. You're going to be monitoring traffic. That's pretty common in a security analyst role. From there, you start to see the security engineer role. That's the next progression where people typically go in their security path. So security analyst, very common starter. Security engineer is that next role. This is where you're actually setting up systems. You're engineering these systems. You're installing different technologies, firewalls, things like that. And you're engineering that structure of how they're set up. You're not just administering something that is already set up or just monitoring something that's already set up. You're actually the one that's configuring it. So 150,000 to 248,000 for security engineer role. Really starting to get up there in the money very quickly. You can see security, the money just goes really quick, right? That's just how it is. If we go ahead and we scroll over, we keep going through this progression. Now we start to see something like a senior security engineer. And that's 175,000 to 262,000. Then, just like with the network side of things, we have a security architect. This is very common. Sometimes this is rolled into those other roles, like network architect or the system architect if you had one. 186,000 to 295,000. Fairly comparable salaries, very similar. Tends to be on the higher end of something like the network architect salary if you have it, because it's very focused on security technologies and it's a very focused role on security technologies. So that's a good role if it exists, if it's an option for you. Then we start getting into the management roles. So information security manager, 159,000 to 250,000. Now again, this category is this 5 to 10 years of experience. That's where you're going to start breaking into the management roles for cybersecurity, for information security. Just like with IT, that's pretty consistent as far as experience. Then we start to get a senior security manager. Typically, there's always going to be a senior security manager. You might oversee other managers, you might oversee their work. You might just be a senior level manager that is just responsible for more people. Maybe you have more staff underneath you. That's pretty common. 182,000 to 270,000. So again, really good jumps. You can see this across the board. Really good salary increases. Director of Information Security, 216,000 to 341,000. Again, this is the late stage, so 10 to 15 years. Then we go to VP of Information Security, just like we had a VP of IT, 229,000 to 370,000. And then, of course, we wrap it up with the Chief Information Security Officer, the CISO or CISO, 303,000 to 499,000. Now, typically when we're looking at the CISO versus the CIO will almost always be in charge of all the technology, all the infrastructure. Sometimes you'll see a CISO reporting into a CIO. That's a pretty common reporting structure that you'll see in a lot of organizations because they don't necessarily, at least in today's world, want to have a true CISO. So it might be even a director of security that reports into the CIO. There's a lot of implications with having a chief level executive or a chief level member of your staff in your company. So you don't always see that. But if you have a true CISO and the structure is like this in an organization, and what you should strive for, it's going to be that 303 to 499,000. Again, talked about this before. A lot of these roles, as you go up in the ladder and you climb the ladder, they're going to start getting additional incentives, bonuses, equity, all this stuff. So keep that in mind as you're kind of going through this and you're climbing the ladder. Okay, we'll go back to the beginning here because there's other roles. So GRC analyst, 97,000, 172,000. Pretty good pay. A lot of people trying to get into GRC. You will see, especially in the early levels, there's a discrepancy between the technical aspect and the non-technical or less technical aspects. So more technical jobs, especially early on, tend to pay a little bit more. They do start to balance out as you climb the ladder, but that's something to understand. Senior GRC analyst, you can see we kind of skipped over here this 2 to 5 years of experience category, because typically with senior GRC analyst, just like senior security engineer, there is no middle step. With security analyst, we had security engineer, then senior security engineer. That doesn't really exist here. It's pretty much GRC analyst, the senior GRC analyst, 153,000 to 243,000. Then you typically will see people go in an information security manager role. So that's important to understand as well, because with GRC, once you get to that senior level, you're basically, your only other option or two options would be to go to the technical route, which is possible, or go to a management level role. And a lot of these management level roles tend to kind of fall into the same category where you're overseeing a certain team, certain area of the organization, what have you. Go back here. So you can see with the GRC analyst, there is another path that you can go though. Instead of just staying in the GRC side where you'd be internal to an organization, you could go the auditor route. That's going to be 99,000 to 155,000. That does have a senior auditor role as well, 147,000 to 210,000. You're not really going to get in this auditing realm unless you have experience with the frameworks, with implementing them, with enforcing them, with already essentially kind of doing the auditing role, because that's what you're going to do in a GRC analyst role. Then you go to audit manager, 136,000 to 203,000. You can see there's a little bit of dip here between senior auditor and audit manager. That happens sometimes. Again, the salary ranges aren't perfect, but there is typically, if you think of this, a lot of the individual contributor roles, there's one salary pay band or kind of category, and then the managers, they have another category, and sometimes they don't exactly align. It's not always just a straight shot up with the salary. So that's another important thing to understand here. Going down the audit path, then you would go to a director of audit, 161,000 to 266,000. Security consultant, 139,000, 255,000. That's because eventually you might just want to go be a consultant, and that's okay. You can be a consultant at any level of experience. You don't just have to get to this final category, this 10 to 15 years, because there's definitely more junior consultants that are out there. But typically when you get to that stage, for audit manager, you can either be a director of audit or a security consultant. A lot of places don't have like a VP of audit. If you did, that's okay. You'd kind of fall into this VP of information security kind of salary range, 229 to 370,000. But again, it doesn't always exist. And then the final role here, the final path, penetration tester, 106,000 to 190,000. A lot of people will start out here in this role, or they will go from help desk or something in IT to this penetration tester role. And that's totally possible. With penetration tester, you basically become a senior penetration tester. 156,000 to 254,000. Now, a lot of penetration testers, they go to the consultant route. So that's important to understand as well. But there are not a lot of steps built into the penetration testing path. Basically, you're a penetration tester, senior penetration tester. You could go to something like research, but it's generally going to kind of fall in this category as well. And then, of course, you could go to a partner, consultant, managing partner, managing consultant, managing director, all those things. But pretty much, if you want to be a penetration tester and that is your path, that is your desired kind of area of expertise, you're either going to have to just continue to get really good at penetration testing and get good bonuses, start your own firm, something like that, or climb the ladder in your existing firm. There you go. These are the common job titles for IT and cybersecurity, the amount of years required, and the pay bands or the salary for those different jobs. Remember, these are common career progressions, but they're not the way that you have to follow exactly. It's not set in stone. You could go to one job title, skip to another, skip different pay bands or salary requirements. You can do a lot in this career field, but it's important to understand the different job titles that exist and where they fall in the pay bands and in organizations. So keep that in mind. I hope you found this information helpful, and I'll see you next time. Are you tired of overpaying for cybersecurity training? Are you interested in training from industry professionals? Are you looking for cybersecurity career services? If you answered yes to any of those questions, then cybertrainingpro.com is the perfect platform for you. At Cybertraining Pro, we're a one-stop shop for all your cybersecurity needs. We can train you for industry certifications or just improve your overall knowledge and skills in a certain area. Unlike other platforms, we don't stop there. We can also coach you throughout your career, practice your interview skills, or create a high-performing resume with our career services. Cybertrainingpro.com isn't just another training platform. Students get exclusive access to our private community where we go beyond training courses to provide additional content, tips and tricks, and engagement with both other students and staff. Look, by the year 2025, there could be as many as 3.5 million job openings in cybersecurity. With so much opportunity, why not maximize your career potential with a platform that cares about your success? Come join us at cybertrainingpro.com and start building your future today.